Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. This week my supporters on Patreon voted for the Serpent Society as our commander, a black-green deathtouch deck that also has the poison alternate win condition. Our commander is a 3-mana 3/4 with deathtouch and ward, which forces the opponent to get 5 poison counters. Although in my testing our opponents are terrified of targeting the Serpent Society, so it may as well have hexproof. And then whenever another creature we control with deathtouch dies, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature of their choice. So this archetype rewards us for playing some cheap deathtouch creatures and sometimes sacrificing them ourselves so we can enable the Serpent Society's ability. So then if we take a look at our deck breakdown, I've split it up into a few different categories, starting with our 1-mana deathtouch creatures, and there's a ton of these available on Arena. I'm playing almost all of them, there's even some that I had to leave out. Then we've got our remaining deathtouch creatures and deathtouch synergies, one of the standouts of course being Finn the Fangbearer, turning our deathtouch creatures into additional poison counters to complement our commander's ward ability. Then we've got a bit of mana acceleration, don't need a ton of it, but most of these are also just 2-mana deathtouch creatures that happen to tap for mana, so they have great synergy throughout. And then we've got our sacrifice outlets, so we can sacrifice our own deathtouch creatures and enable the Serpent Society's ability in the process, so that can also double up as removal against other creatures. And then we've got some other removal that can just pinpoint target an opposing creature, and these are often bite effects that we can combine with our deathtouch creatures to take out whatever we want. And then finally our miscellaneous section has a few more tutor effects to get Finn in play more reliably, as well as a few card draw enchantments, and a couple more ways to apply poison to the opponent with Triumph of the Hordes and Skitherix, which we'll discuss in more detail in a second here. So this is just a rough breakdown. Now for the deep dive, starting with our deathtouch creatures, not going to go over them into too much detail. We mostly care about a 1/1 creature that has deathtouch. Some have useful abilities, like Toxic One on the Skull Dweller can also apply more poison, and Ashnell is actually one of the standout cards as well, as it can also double up as a sacrifice outlet to enable the Serpent Society. Otherwise it's a lot of random draft commons with maybe some small upside. But for the most part, just 1/1 deathtouch. Tiny Bones can also maybe provide value if it hits the opponent. The Vampire has deathtouch and lifelink, so that's a bit of an upside. The Sniper has vigilance, reach, and deathtouch, so also one of the better ones. You'll notice I did keep all the snakes in the 1-drop slot, since we do have a 2-drop that cares about snakes, and of course it's also on theme. The Dryad with Delirium can maybe get bigger. Grist we can also maybe get back out of the graveyard and transform it. And then lots of vanilla 1/1 deathtouch. The Renegade can also pick up an extra counter with Revolt. The Radioactive Spider has exactly 1 spider hero it can get, so that can also maybe double up as a sacrifice outlet for 2 mana. And then the Serpent Specialist and finally Virulent Emissary can also gain a bit of life back. Then moving up the curve, we have Ophelia, and this is the primary reason to include as many snakes as possible, as the 5-mana ability can let our snakes make the opponent lose half their life if they connect, and can also pay 2 mana when she attacks to make a death-touching snake token. White Widow rewards us for hitting the opponent with our Death Touchers, giving them an extra +1/+1 counter, very similar to Vraska, Swarm's Eminence passive ability, and Vraska can also -2 twice to make some Death Touching assassins that also have a Death Touch for Planeswalkers, essentially. Then of course Finn is the best payoff for hitting the opponent with our Death Touchers, 2 poison counters each, so we only need to hit them with 5 Death Touch creatures to get the game over with, and that's not even counting the ward ability on the Serpent Society. Then Cheval rewards us for answering opposing creatures, as we'll maybe get a bounty of 3 life and 1 card. Black Widow lets us draw a card at the cost of 1 life for each Death Toucher that connects. We've got the Hooded Blightfang, which can maybe make up for some of the life loss, as now we get to drain the opponent for 1 and gain 1 life whenever a Death Toucher attacks, and also has Death Touch for Planeswalkers. We've got Unstoppable Slasher as something that can keep coming back, also a good one to keep sacrificing repeatedly. Glissa with Death Touch and First Strike is a nightmare for creatures to get past, and if it connects we can maybe draw a card or destroy an enchantment. Shieldred is just an individually very powerful card, but also has good synergy throughout as a Death Touch creature that can gain more life if we draw cards, so pairs well with some of our other card draw effects. And then Questing Beast, also a card with a lot of text, but mostly interested in a hasty creature that can help finish off Planeswalkers, and that's a lot harder for the opponent to block with her smaller stuff. Then our ramp section includes a few artifacts with a Soulstone, Talisman, and Arcane Signet. Farseek can get our various black-green dual lands, and then a few 2-mana creatures that have Death Touch that can tap for 1 mana, so these are perfect for the deck. Then we get to our sacrifice outlets, which can help enable the Serpent Society's ability. Couple instants, Corrupted Conviction, Village Rites at 1 mana, Deadly Dispute at 2, making treasure. There's the Nightmare in enchantment form to keep recycling creatures out of the graveyard and enable the Society. Evolutionary Leap can pay a green, sack a creature, and replace it with a random one from our library, so it can also be a nice instant speed sacrifice outlet. Felstinger with Exploit is also quite on brand here. Can sack a creature to draw 2 at the cost of 2 life and maybe enable the Serpent Society in the process. And then Sidisi, another Exploit creature that turns into a demonic tutor to find whatever we want. Then there's Henrika with many modes, including making each player sacrifice a creature, so maybe they now have to sacrifice 2 creatures, and then can also transform into a nice flying death-touching lifelinker. And then Vraska, Golgari Queen, of course also very on-brand in our Snake deck, can also destroy an opposing non-land permanent with mana value 3 or less right away, but we're mostly interested in the +2 ability, where we can now sacrifice another permanent to gain a life draw card, and of course if we're sacrificing a Death Touch creature, it will also enable the Serpent Society. And then our removal includes the cheapest bite effects, like Hard-Hitting Question and Horrific Assault, to combine with our Death Touchers. Hunter's Talent in enchantment form also has a few useful modes. There's the Infectious Bite to apply an extra poison counter, also an instant. And then the Feral Encounter at sorcery speed can also maybe find an extra creature we get to cast. Then Mortar Pod is perfect in a Death Touch deck, as it's the creature itself dealing 1 damage, so it can deal 1 Death Touch damage to take out whatever we want, and it doubles up as a sacrifice outlet. And then Garruk Relentless can maybe fight something small, transform into Garruk the Veil Cursed, which can make additional death-touching wolf tokens, and then can also maybe use the other -1 ability, which doubles up as another sacrifice outlet, and maybe tutor up something like Finn the Fangbearer. And then our miscellaneous section has a couple tutors here with Green Sun's Zenith and Nature's Rhythm, mostly trying to get Finn. And then we also have Phyrexian Arena and Guardian Project for additional card advantage. And then Triumph of the Hordes is a recent addition that you'll have to watch out for going forward, giving our team +1/+1, Trample, and Infect, and especially in a deck full of Death Touch creatures. Now with Death Touch and Trample, you still only need to assign 1 damage to every blocker, the rest can trample over, and with Infect, that's now in the form of poison counters, so this can just end the game out of nowhere. And then another source of Infect is Skitherix, a 4/4 dragon, can also give it haste for an extra black mana, so a couple attacks can also get the game over with. And then we've got Gwenom, which is essentially a Bolas' Citadel if it manages to attack, and this is the spider hero that we can also maybe tutor up with our radioactive spider. And then the mana base is your typical black-green dual lands and fetch lands for mana fixing. The one utility land I would strongly recommend is Phyrexian Tower, as it also doubles up as a sacrifice outlet to enable the Serpent Society while also producing extra mana. And then cards like Yavimaya and Urborg can also be very useful, can sometimes save you a bit of damage from your fetch lanes, and of course also good mana fixing. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play, facing Moleman, making a bunch of Moloid tokens. So Mortar Pod can be an answer to the commander. Yeah, I think this hand has enough going for it. Really want to prevent them from making a bunch of tokens in the first place, because otherwise they can get in the way of our Death Touchers, when we could be setting up Finn with Nature's Rhythm. I will get a Surveil land here, since we could use more mana. And now Mortar Pod, a nice answer to the Lanor Elves. So let's Surveil. Say no to an Ankle Biter. And then get another dual land. Shoot the Elves. And then hope to draw land next turn. Bono now with the Baloth, that's fine. No lands, can still play Fang and Poisoner, which are happy to trade for a Baloth. Although next turn I could also Mortar Paw to shoot Moleman. Opponent with Altar into Delighted Halfling, milling Gwenom, and drawing us into a land. That's nice of them. So then now Serpent Society is an option. So next turn I can maybe Fel Stinger, force them to sacrifice. Opponent could be saving Moleman with a fetch land to immediately make 2 tokens, but so it goes. And then now at least one can attack, if not both. Attacking with both is maybe bad, because then they can trade for both, and we don't get the advantage of the Serpent Society's ability. So expecting Moleman into a fetch, and that's what we see. So they get to make 2 Moloid tokens. But the Serpent Society at least forces them to sacrifice a non-token. And a Green Suns. If we still have a Finn left in the deck, that is. But yeah, I don't think that's the plan right now. So I need to deal with the Moleman. I could try Fel Stinger, but then even if I draw land, I'm not going to be able to equip the Mortar Pod. So yeah, not in a great spot, but I think we just answer the Moleman now. Could attack first, I suppose. But I doubt our opponent's blocking. They could double block with the tokens. Yep, we're still just going to sacrifice to target the Moleman. And then they should sacrifice the Moleman to the Society's trigger. Cannot sacrifice tokens. Opponent made the mistake of sacking the Halfling when we were already targeting the Moleman. So they just sacrificed the Halfling for no reason. So that helps. Makes it harder for them to redeploy their commander. Slasher also doesn't really line up against the Moloids, but does have good synergy with the Mortar Pod. And call damage control to get back the Halfling and a fetch. So I guess they get to play the Halfling anyway. Okay. Am I going to get milled out by the Altar? It is possible. But they still have a long way to go. Black Widow rewards us for hitting the opponents, which I'm maybe not quite in a position to do yet, because they can line up some reasonable blocks. So then I think it's Fel Stinger, sack the Fang, hope to draw some lands. And then target myself. Alright, Forest and Village Rights. So then can still hit with the Serpent Society. And if they double block Grist, I guess I'm happy. Since we get to take out a Halfling. Okay, pass a turn. They get to replay Moleman, replay a fetch, make 2 more tokens at least. Opponent goes for 6 instead. And the Emeritus. Alright, so want to deal with the Emeritus before they get anything back. The Assault is a good draw. So got a couple options. Can maybe start by attacking with Fel Stinger. Do I also attack with Serpent Society? If they double block, that's maybe awkward. Although I guess if they double block, I could Village Right, sack the Stinger, and that still works out. I imagine I'll just take it. And then still gonna Village Right the Stinger. Try to hit some lands. We did not, but did find another removal spell. So I could hit 6, or what I could do is play a Radioactive Spider, equip it with a Mortar Pod, and this time I can deal damage to the token, and they will be forced to sacrifice the non-token. So this time they don't have a choice. Plus, we already milled Gwenum, so it's not like the spider can get anything else. Alright, so the board's cleaned up. And we still have 2 removal spells for Mole Man. But they will get to make some tokens. Yeah, this is definitely a powerful commander, because it sort of pays for its own commander tax if you get to replay a fetch right away. So still not even halfway. Drew a land, that's nice. Could also channel this to get a specific creature back, but we already have 2 tutor effects, so I'm not too worried. So then, this turn, take out Mole Man. Could get Black Widow going. Green Suns, is Questing Beast still available? It is. So that's potentially an option for Green Suns. Let's go for Black Widow. Opponent's most likely chumping. And pass a turn. So Mole Man costs 6 with a discount from Medallion. So they can still play it, but then they're not playing a land. So Dryads make sense. And a Mossborn Hydra, that's a must answer. Yavimaya, good draw. So could go Slasher, equip Mortar Pod, and then still hard-hitting Question. Clean up the Moloid and both her creatures. So damage the token, make them sack a non-token. Opponent actually keeping the Dryad, interestingly. Can attack first, see what we get. Opponent's down to 9 in the meantime. Draw 2. And I'll still take care of the Dryad here while we can. Okay, so we might have turned the corner. Mole Man is back, can make 2 tokens. But yeah, I've got another removal spell in hand. Questing Beast is potentially close to lethal as well. And the Mortar Pod can also help clean up. So yeah, against tokens, Mortar Pod is especially effective. Bristly Bill is next. And Ashnod the draw. So let's see, if we play Ashnod, shoot a token. Can also Feral Encounter, see what we get. And down goes Bristly Bill. And then I could also just equip the Slasher, answer both, hit for 6, draw 2. That seems fine. So equip Slasher. Target the token. Could also equip second main and leave that Mortar Pod ability as instant speed removal in case of any crazy haste creatures. Seems unlikely. It's not like a Craterhoof would be lethal. Okay, pass a turn. And we should finally get there. Yeah, it was definitely a hard-fought battle. Let's see if they found a solution. Opponent's going through the graveyard for Analyze with Collect Evidence, so they get to get whatever creature they want. 6 mana, I mean Primeval Titan comes to mind, but don't see how that's saving them here. Opponent gets a Rampaging Baloths. Do they have a land left? They do not. GG's. Very good game. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play, facing a black-green control deck with Professor Dellian Fel. Does line up pretty well against our Serpent Society if they're light on creatures and just have lots of sweepers. So, yeah, what's a good hand? We need some sort of card draw engine. And then, yeah, hope to outgrind them somehow. Glissa's not really gonna work, so I don't think this is good enough. Alright, Black Widow can potentially draw some cards. We've got the Green Suns to try and get our Finn to go for the poison kill. Opponent starting out strong with an exploration. Alright, get to double 1-drop now. So then land for Finn could be decent, although then of course they're just going to use the prof to get rid of it. And we'll need to find a way to get it back. So maybe land for Black Widow first is the way to go. Sadly, Black Widow only triggers of dealing damage to players and not planeswalkers. Alright, they will actually destroy the ankle biter. And we found the land. So, decisions. Serpent Society versus Black Widow. Do we bother attacking the Professor? Drawing 2 cards here seems like a big deal. So I think I do go Black Widow and then go face, but we do get totally blown out by a sweeper. Although if they had a sweeper, I don't really see them taking out my 1/1. So they get to draw as well. But then Vraska gives us maybe a stickier threat that's a bit harder to interact with.
Go ahead. Impress me.
The Beanstalk is acceptable. Theater, thanks to Yavimaya, could have temporarily made a green mana. So they either missed that interaction or don't have a 3 or 4-drop. Heroic Feast, so they are going deeper into the life gain synergies. Okay, I mean, this turn is good for me. Going for Finn doesn't seem like the move. Just go for Vraska. And then the Assassin actually gets to assassinate Planeswalkers for what it's worth. But, yeah, we'll just deal with the Professor and go face. And get some extra +1 counters.
You see an assassin coming for you. That's a bad assassin.
Opponent did eventually draw into a sweeper. That's too bad. Alright, so how do we want to get back on the board? Green Suns could also get a questing beast at some point to take out the Professor. So, Soulstone into a Blind Fang plus Farika's Chosen looks okay. Could also play the Serpent Society, since the Blind Fang's more impactful if we get to untap with a few creatures. And then I'll make another Assassin. This might be a Casualties of War, since I see them hovering over a bunch of stuff. At least the Soulstone is indestructible. Yep, there it is. So Yavimaya, the Assassin, taken care of. Vraska's gone. Triumph of the Hordes. Okay. So if I were to Triumph, I can deal 6 poison right now. Green Suns for Questing Beast is also still a consideration, but that could be a better follow-up. Sadly, Green Suns can get black creatures, so I can get the Infected Dragon. But we could get Finn. A little bit short of Finn plus Triumph of the Hordes. But yeah, maybe that's the play, just go for Finn. And then I can still play the Blind Fang. Have to fetch since they destroyed my Yavimaya. We are counting on the opponent not having another sweeper. So that's now 4 poison, and Triumph can hopefully cross the finish line next turn. Bastion is acceptable. Triumph gives Trample as well. Terrace under Finn. Alright, so the Triumph going the distance here. As in many a commander game. So even if they block, we have enough trample damage to poison them to death. But we're also pretty close to just winning with regular damage, to be fair. And there we go. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play here, facing our habitual game against Hei Bai. And what do we think of our hands? Well, Finn is definitely one of the best cards we can have to maybe quickly get the game over with. Best case scenario, draw maybe another black 1-drop so I can go Soulstone, play it, and develop my board some more. Alright, a Dryad might be worth it. And then next turn we can at the very least double spell. The Slasher is also a pretty fast clock outside of the poison kill. Opponent with a Talisman and a Foulmire Knight. So Soulstone into Finn, I apply 2 poison, but then I do have 3 attackers for next turn, so that's pretty decent. Could also go Foulmire Knight plus Finn, 2 poison, but only have 2 mana next turn. So that kind of limits my options a bit more. So then, if we draw land, I could also go on Guardian Project, start drawing off playing my 1-drop. Could be weak to a sweeper. Ooh, Supreme Verdict, that's unfortunate. Lost Finn and a mana creature. At least I did get the Soulstone out there, but yeah, that's a huge setback. So I guess Slasher is next. Yeah, it's always tough to tell whether your Hei Bai opponent is on a sweeper build or if they're playing more mana creatures. Maybe the Talisman should have been a tell that it was more likely to be a controlling build with a couple board wipes. Gonna be the Island Temple to make tokens. Can get in the way of our Slasher. Yeah, this is not ideal. With only 2 lands, we don't really have many options. Opponent jumps, I can play Society and they can just cast another sweeper potentially, or make more tokens. So no good options. I can maybe draw with a Knight to try and hit a land drop, and then Questing Beast might line up a bit better. Or we can try to outgrind them with a Guardian Project still. Alright, get to play Blooming Marsh into Knights. At least these enchantments are good in the face of a more controlling build. And our opponent's still not going for Hei Bai. They can easily keep jumping the Slasher. Maybe force us to overextend. Yeah, I guess the Slasher could also play defense now. Just get the Guardian Project down. And try to take over that way. Because they were not out racing them as it stands. Opponent's just gonna pass, dealing 3. So they could have some removal up now. Can play a Leap, Society, and then still sacrifice to the Leap. So that seems like an okay sequence. Possible they plan to use a counterspell. That resolves. And then Slasher can maybe start attacking now. If I sack anything to the leap, we force them to sacrifice the Ancient Wars. Opponent with Darkness as a black fog effect. Okay, that works. And an Entity Tracker to maybe start drawing. So damage happens. Can let them untap. And then in response to Hei Bai, maybe sack the Knight. Triggers a Society. And they have to decide if they keep the Shrine or the Tracker. Opponent keeps the Tracker. And the Air Temple, so yeah, more damage. We're down to 9. So Gwenum not looking great. Questing Beast is a good starting point. Can maybe fetch another forest. But I probably sacrifice the Slasher now, since it just keeps getting chumped by the Monk tokens. The Nightmare can also recycle some creatures. And a Specialist can now get rid of Hei Bai. So trying my best. So now Questing Beast attacks. Probably need to leave the Society back on defense. So we are slowly taking over the late game, but without any life gain, I'm still gonna get burnt out. Talisman, trigger prowess. Got a block. Gwenum does have lifelink, opponent does have a sweeper. Don't think we send it to the command zone since we have the Nightmare. Anyway, I can maybe win with Finn. I doubt it. Yeah, no way I have time to redeploy it, so leave it in the graveyard. But yeah, we're dead to the Sanctum if I don't gain any life. Sidisi can exploit something to try and find an answer. What would that be? So try and answer the Stone Fangs. Do I have any disenchants that I can think of? I guess Boseiju. It's not the best answer, but it's something. This is a clue. Yeah, I mean, we have some lifelinkers, but I can't get them in play soon enough. Don't have a way of giving haste. Nightmare also can't find an immediate answer. So yeah, Sidisi sacrifice herself. Or can I play the Newt, play Sidisi? That might be the move. Alright, Emissary can gain life. Is that maybe good enough? Play Emissary. And then I can play Henrika. Try to transform her. Or play Banemaker, gain a life of Emissary. So we're up to 4. Horrific Assault doesn't change anything. So maybe go for Nightmare now, so I don't have to fetch. And get back the Serpent Society. Get another life, so we're up to 5. And then I guess I could still fetch and then replay the Nightmare, sack the Newt. So we're kind of even on life. Just double checking that there's nothing better at 1 or 2 mana. There's still Finn. Yeah, Slasher seems fine. Okay, maybe Emissary to the rescue. Still gonna be close, because if they replay Hei Bai, they get to trigger the Air Temple. Now Shieldred could be great. So yeah, I don't think Black Widow's happening. So I'm down to 2. Hei Bai gets another shrine, puts me to 1. And they had a Daydream as their top deck to flicker Hei Bai and get the last point. Yeah, that's very unfortunate. Otherwise, next turn with Shieldred to gain life when we draw off Guardian Project. We've got a pretty good chance of turning it around, plus we have a bunch more life gain creatures here. So yeah, very thin margins. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Anina, the X-cost deck. Our hand is promising. Probably want to start with a Dryad, and then turn 2 I can go Soulstone plus Poisoner. And then we can maybe look into setting up the Serpent Society with a Deadly Dispute to force them to sack maybe their only creature. At least that's the plan. So this is a spot where having a 1 mana instant would be slightly better. So I could actually curve properly with Serpent Society into a 1 mana instant, as opposed to the Dispute costing 2. So our opponents ponder into a Rampant Growth. And yeah, stick to the plan. The Encounter could also answer Anina. So that's probably the play now. And then I can still find something I can cast afterwards. Sure, so play this. Find an Engine Rat. And then we get to deal damage. And play a couple more 1-drops out. Could have maybe gone with a Peatland and saved the fetch for a Surveil. Don't have to play the Specialist now, to be fair. It's not like the 1 extra damage is all that relevant, although now with the Green Suns we can get Finn, and then the Death Touchers are quite important. Alright, opponent's gonna make a 1/1 Dryad, keeping up 2 mana presumably to counter the Serpent Society. Okay, so I would rather have them counter the Serpent Society than my Green Suns, I think. So I'll start here. Yep. Back to the command zone. And then I still attack. Since I don't mind trading for the 1/1, opponent's gonna take it. And I'll just play the Specialist and pass. Opponent now with the Solemn. That's a creature that they maybe don't mind trading as much. So good Society before getting Finn. Although, yeah, Finn would already apply 6 poison and force a trade. So that seems pretty good to me. And then I can still keep up Deadly Dispute. Opponent's gonna just take it all. So that's 8 poison. Pass a turn. Anina is back. Can gain haste to immediately make mana. But yeah, they're currently still dead on board. So they need an answer for Finn. A Mockingbird for 2. Conjures a Beastcaller. So our opponent will have 3 blockers to my 5 attackers. So they still seem very much dead to me. Alright, sweet. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Brigid, so a green-white tokens deck. The tokens line up well against our 1/1 Death Touchers. At least the good news is that the Serpent Society can make them sacrifice a non-token creature. So if this hand is not perfect, Mortar Pods can also turn Death Touchers into more removal. But yeah, we're not going to be able to keep up with the opponent's tokens, and then we're not going to have much left for Triumph of the Hordes. So I think we try something else. Well, this is probably a downgrade without green mana. Otherwise, Butler into Project with Mortar Pod could have worked out. Alright, I guess we'll try this. And then, I don't know if I believe in Triumph of the Hordes in this matchup. I guess Glissa's also pretty poor, since it just gets chumped. But it does block well. Play the Spider, hope to draw some 2-mana ramp card. A land is good too. Opponent with Springleaf in the meantime. Can also sack the Spider for 2 mana to get Gwenom as the only Spider hero in the deck. But it can also function as a sack outlet for the Serpent Society. So now Avacyn's Pilgrim and Carroted, so opponent's going nice and wide, starting to generate a lot of mana. And yeah, that's how the token deck can pull ahead. So I'm still thinking Serpent Society over Glissa, since Glissa just gets blocked by the 1/1 next turn. Although I guess you could make the argument that then I can go Serpent Society plus Village Rites and make them sack a bunch of stuff. Emissary can also gain them life. And there's my Frog Butler. I guess Garruk and then take out one of the opponent's creatures is also an option. Try to transform it. Can take out the Caryatids. Although Brigid will also transform, making a bunch of mana. Although yeah, with 4 non-tokens, there's no way I can pinpoint Brigid right now. So I guess we'll try Garruk. Find your Caryatids. And pass a turn. And Brigid transforms. Can Garruk survive? And that's a Ghalta. Alright, it's not a token, so that was a little unexpected. Now Glissa lines up pretty well against Ghalta. Can make another Death Toucher. I don't think I need to sacrifice anything to the minus. Play Glissa. Could play Butler or just keep up mana for either Spider or Village Rites. 5 Village Rites. The token now, I could still maybe draw a Death Toucher. Opponent has to sacrifice a non-token creature. So that could be fine. Alright, Green Suns will have to wait. So a lot riding on Glissa, holding off Ghalta. Although at least if they attack I can trade. And Brigid transforms back. And now a Survival could get whatever they want. Maybe they find an answer, maybe they find like a Craterhoof to just go over the top. We'll see. Something like a Skyclave Apparition they could still cast with Pilgrim and Springleaf, but no, opponent scoops it up. So yeah, I guess Glissa holding off Ghalta was good enough here, and then next turn, between Garruk and a Green Suns, we have a lot of options. Can always sacrifice a Spider to get Gwenom, although I wouldn't be casting it yet. So yeah, what would be my sequence? I probably want to try and get rid of Brigid, so they don't have as much mana for the Survival. So then what would we be getting with Garruk? Could technically also get Sidisi, So we sack the spider, opponent sacks a non-token, we get CDC, can exploit herself to get hard-hitting question, and then use that as removal to probably clean up the rest. So then our opponent would not have much left. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Ognis, so a hasty deck. Our hand is functional, nothing exciting, but got some Death Touchers that can hopefully get in the way. And then Gwenom is something more exciting to work towards. Alright, we've got some removal now with the hard-hitting question. May go for a Slasher before the Serpent Society. And a Territorial Kavu. Play Slasher, and then I think we just attack with both. Could also just send one in case they do remove the Slasher. Sure. So 3 mana for our opponents. Kavu attacks. They will loot. Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to just trading for an ankle biter. Keep the Slasher, especially if they were maybe planning to cast a sweeper. And we've got more removal in hand. Still just trading a 1-drop for a 2-drop at the end of the day. Henrika's nice. Okay, can go ahead and attack and then play Serpent Society. And then Henrika gives us a sack outlet that can enable the ability. But yeah, I'm not sure what our opponent's keeping up. So we'll see what they want to do about the Slasher. It was a Riveteer's Charm, so yeah, Slasher gets sacrificed, comes back. Play the Society, can get a Survey land end of turn. So we're in a decent spot. Have a blocker for Ognis. It's going to be a Bloodbraid cascading into and Grist, so that was a pretty nice hit. So they can make a token, although at least the Serpent Society specifically says sacrifice a non-token creature. And our opponent's going to play defense. Hard-hitting question can also hit Planeswalkers, so that's nice. And a Swamp I'll take. So I could go for Gwenom, try and set that up. Or we can go for Henrika, sacrifice the Banemaker, opponent forced to sack Bloodbraid, attack Grist. Yeah, that's an okay plan. Although that will still leave Grist in play, maybe ready to -2 if they trump. Question on Grist is not enough to answer it, since Death Touch doesn't apply to Planeswalkers in the same way as creatures. Can also transform, but then we're still a bit short. So yeah, maybe I'm better off just going for Gwenom, but then for sure Grist is going to answer it, so that doesn't seem like the plan. So yeah, I'll go for Henrika. Yeah, if I sacrifice, at least I can attack with the Serpent Society. Whereas if I don't, they could double block, which is something we want to avoid. Yeah, I'll let the Grists keep 1 loyalty. Grist makes an insect, opponent goes fetching for Boomy. Alright, that's maybe a better target for the hard-hitting question. And a Deadly Dispute. Okay, so Henrika could either draw or transform. If we transform, we finish off Grist. And then Dispute sacking Slasher is good value, since that triggers the Serpent Society. Can still maybe play Gwenom afterwards. They can sack the Earthbended land, since that's still a non-token. Ooh, Mortar Pod is also spicy. Yeah, I think we go for Gwenom, transform Henrika, attack Grists, and the opponent is too far behind. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing the Scarlet Witch, so a mono-red Storm deck. This hand needs to find land number 3, but then we could make something happen. The Village Right's also functioning as a sack outlet, so we can maybe sacrifice an Engine Rat and still force them to sacrifice a Scarlet Witch. Start with our Toxic Creature, immediately gets bolted. Alright, could double 1-drop, could also keep up the Village Rights. I'll go double 1-drop. Opponent ramping with Ironcrag. I luckily found a land. So get to play the Serpent Society, and then now we've got a plan to deal with the Scarlet Witch first time around. Alright, the Blade Reforged is not going to have a chance to attack. The Ironcrag does not transform. And Glissa's not bad either. Alright, I mean, probably still cast the Village Rights. Hope to draw land for Glissa. And then we are on the Triumph of the Hordes plan. So we just want to get a bunch of power in play, and then Trample and Infect for the win. Mizzix Mastery the Bolt for Glissa. Okay, that's fine. And then they've got something else. A tapped gate for value. The Nightmare is also a nice sacrifice outlet to enable the Serpent Society, but I think I prefer Questing Beasts and Smash. So then a Triumph next turn would be 10 Infect exactly, assuming they play Scarlet Witch and soak up 1, because with Death Touch we only need to assign 1 damage to every blocker. Opponent with the Goggles passes the turn. Yeah, I think we go for it. We were close to winning with regular damage, but may as well do it in style here. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Sauron. Dino Devotee can gain life, turn creatures into base power toughness 5/5. Our hand has potential. Hopefully we get to transform Garruk. And this turn, probably go for Specialists over Tiny Bones. We're bottlenecked on green. I may end up sacrificing it to the Phyrexian Tower. But yeah, the Tower plus Society is also a nice combo, giving us a built-in sacrifice outlet. And a Magus of the Library. Okay, so can at the very least Farseek this turn. Setting up Garruk to maybe fight the Magus next turn. Yeah, I'm down. Get our Surveil land. And don't need more 1-drops. Could also just play Serpent Society into Phyrexian Tower, play 2 more 1-drops, and get a Society trigger in the meantime. But Garruk, fight their creature, transform it, seems fun. And then can start making Death Touch Wolf tokens, which is pretty metal. Now the Lecture has great synergy with Sauron. But yeah, I think we stick to the plan. Garruk can now fight a Lecture instead.
Got a good head on those shoulders.
Transforms. And we can keep this on defense now to protect the Planeswalker. Can activate it again next turn to start making wolves. And then the -1 sacrifice a creature can also maybe help us find Finn. And also gives us another sacrifice outlet for the Society. So yeah, a ton of great synergy throughout. Just gonna make a wolf. Play the Society, draw off Selvala. Yeah, this is gonna be pretty brutal. And then sacrifice to Phyrexian Tower. Opponent sacrifices one of their creatures. And then, what do we like? Tiny Bones plus Ophelia, maybe? Can also go for a Renegade. Let's go for Ophelia. And Tiny Bones. And attack. So now Garruk sacrificing another one of my Death Touchers and finding Finn. Could maybe start setting up the poison kill. Our opponent missing a couple land drops, it seems. Ooh, Scale Up, however, is quite powerful with Selvala. Can now make 6 mana. But if their play is just Sauron, we should be fine. Because yeah, between Garruk and the tower, we can just make them sacrifice 2 creatures. Now with a Mystic, I guess they could sack 1 more. Pollinator as well. And a Galta. Okay, that's a good one. So, do I have a change of plans? I mean, Garruk getting whatever creature I want still seems pretty good here. Can sack a freshly played Death Toucher. And then what creature to get is still kind of interesting. Could be Finn, could be something like a Questing Beast, or even Sidisi, which in turn can get some other cards while exploiting a creature and forcing another sacrifice. So yeah, options aplenty. So yeah, we got to see our Serpent Society Death Touch deck in action. And yeah, the deck can definitely play a few different roles. Sometimes you're just the aggressor with lots of cheap Death Touch creatures and then a tutor for Finn or some of your other poison effects. Sometimes you can play the control role and leverage your Serpent Society and maybe a sacrifice outlet to take care of the opponent's creatures. So it does have a few different angles of attack, which is always nice. The main weakness remains to pure control decks that have access to a bunch of board wipes, since those can just deal with your creatures, which answers both your plan A as well as your plan B, since they typically don't have many creatures themselves that we can make them sacrifice. So yeah, pure control is definitely the weakness of this archetype, but otherwise it seems like a pretty fun deck. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.